Welcome to the Deep Dive. So glad you could join us.
Great to be diving in. Today we're focusing on a really specific, incredibly poignant section from Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov.
That's right. We're using the source material you've provided as our map, really. It details this part of the story, and we're going to navigate through it together.
Think of this as a focused exploration. We're looking closely at the human drama, the intense emotions that Dostoevsky lays bare just in this particular thread.
Yeah, our mission today is to unpack these complex relationships, trace the path of some pretty tragic events, and really try to feel the weight of the emotions here, the guilt, the grief. We'll be your guides through these complexities.
And we'll meet some absolutely key figures along the way. There's a young boy tragically facing his end. Ilyusha, exactly. And then there's his friend Kolya, who is just, well, a fascinating mix of contradictions.
And surrounding them, you really feel this powerful, almost inescapable sense of guilt and loss that ties their stories together.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Our starting point, as you said, is Ilyusha. The sources describe him as being about, 10 or 11 years old?
Around that age, yeah. And heartbreakingly, as we join this part of the story, he's already on his deathbed.
It's a tough place to start, but it's essential. And to really grasp his situation, we need to remember his background, which the sources lay out. He's Captain Snegiryov's son.
Right, the captain who suffered that awful, deeply public humiliation being beaten by Dmitry Karamazov. That event casts such a long shadow.
It really does, and it affected Ilyusha directly, didn't it? We saw that earlier, based on the source material. His reaction to the shame.
Exactly. Remember that incident with Alexei Karamazov? Ilyusha, lashing out in this kind of misdirected fury, throws stones at Alexei, actually cuts his finger.
Driven by his father's disgrace. So you have this boy, marked by hardship, by shame, maybe by a bit of that anger still simmering, and now he's physically failing, weak, dying.
And what the sources really emphasize, almost above all else in this state, is his focus. It's incredibly specific.
Yeah, despite everything, despite the illness, his mind is absolutely fixated on one thing.
His dog.
His dog, Duska. The sources paint this really vivid, poignant picture. You've got the family there, the father, Snegiryov, obviously devastated.
His mother, too. And the sources mention her mental state is fragile, which just adds another layer of sadness.
And his sisters, they're all there watching him fade, focused on the medical reality.
Yeah.
But Ilyusha, he's consumed by the dog.
It's not a quiet wish, is it? The sources quote him directly.
No, it's intense, desperate. He keeps repeating, insisting, pleading. Things like, bring me my dog, Zuzka. Bring me Zuzka from anywhere you can.
It's this frantic demand right at the end, overriding everything else. This screams how important this dog is to him.
Yeah.
It's clearly more than just a pet.
It represents something crucial, something unresolved. And that intensity immediately throws up the question the sources push us towards. Why?
Exactly. Why, on the edge of death, is this dog paramount? What's the story here? This isn't just a detail. The sources make it clear this fixation is the key to understanding his state, his suffering, and what happened before he got sick.
Absolutely. It's a central mystery we need to unpack. And to do that, we have to bring in the other major player in this specific drama, Kolya.
Ah, Kolya. Ilyusha's school senior, a bit older, 13 or 14, the sources say?
That's right. And the sources describe him as just incredibly complex, full of these fascinating, sometimes clashing traits.
The first thing highlighted is this daredevil streak.
Yes, the material spends some time on this. He apparently had this tendency for risky, even dangerous stunts, physical acts that could easily get him hurt.
Not just random recklessness, though. There was a reason.
The sources suggest a clear motivation. He desperately wanted adults, even guys in their early 20s, to see him as older, as brave, not limited by his age. He wanted to prove himself.
So performing maturity almost. Trying things even adults might shy away from.
Exactly. A bid for validation, for recognition. Like, look at me. I'm significant. I'm fearless.
But these stunts, they had consequences, right? Especially for his family.
They did. The sources recount his mother's reaction. Finding out about his dangerous activities, she was, understandably, deeply distressed.
Not just angry, but really upset.
Yeah, crying, showing genuine fear for him, but also embracing him. And in those moments, she'd make him promise to stop.
And did he?
The sources say he did. He was apparently genuinely touched by her distress, so he promised, and crucially, he stopped those specific kinds of stunts. which shows, a softer side under that bravado, a capacity for empathy, at least towards his mother.
So there's the physical boldness, the daredevil.
Yeah.
But then the sources describe a completely different side. The genius.
Academically, yeah, he was supposedly brilliant, considered the smartest kid in his class, head and shoulders above everyone else.
The sources even mention other students thought he knew more than the teachers.
Right. Whether literally true or not, it shows his reputation. His intellectual prowess was widely acknowledged among his peers.
And it wasn't just schoolwork. He was like a young philosopher.
Exactly. Drawn to complex topics way beyond his years. The sources specifically mention things like socialism, Voltaire. He was reading heavy books, apparently.
Which led to nicknames.
Yeah, like a walking encyclopedia or a walking library. People saw him as brimming with knowledge and advanced ideas.
So you have this fascinating contrast. The physical risk-taker seeking validation through bravery, and the deep intellectual seeking it through knowledge. How do those fit together?
Well, they combine to make him this really distinct, dynamic, maybe slightly intimidating figure. He wants recognition on multiple levels, physical courage and intellectual brilliance. It makes him stand out.
And it's this complex kid who crosses paths with Ilyusha.
And that's where their friendship begins, a friendship that becomes absolutely central to the tragedy unfolding. The sources detail how it started, and it begins with Ilyusha's tough time at school.
He was being bullied pretty badly, wasn't he?
Constantly. Beaten up by the other boys. And the reason, the sources state clearly, ties back to his father's public shaming.
They used the back scrubber insult, the term thrown at his father after Dmitri beat him.
Exactly. They tormented Ilyusha with it, making him bear the brunt of his father's humiliation. It's incredibly cruel.
And there was a specific incident that brought Kolya into it.
Yes, a turning point. Ilyusha was alone, fighting bravely against 4 or 5 other boys, really holding his own against the odds.
And Kolya saw this.
He did. He saw Ilyusha fighting alone, noticed, as the sources put it, the sparkle in his eyes, like, what a brave kid fighting all alone. He felt it was unfair.
So Kolya, maybe tapping into that brave streak himself, decided to step in.
He did. Intervened, rescued Ilyusha, and Kolya apparently had quite a reputation, a big name at school, the sources say. His involvement was enough.
The bullies backed off just because it was Kolya.
Out of fear, yeah. They stopped attacking and mocking Ilyusha. Kolya's presence gave Ilyusha instant protection.
And it developed beyond just protector. Kolya became a mentor.
That's right. Kolya started sharing his world, his knowledge from all those books, talking about different ideas, helping sharpen Ilyusha's mind.
The sources say Ilyusha's intelligence really started to flourish under Kolya.
Yes, it suggests Kolya provided a positive outlet for his energy and curiosity. And Ilyusha was deeply influenced.
To the point of mimicking him.
Yeah, the sources mention he started copying Kolya quite a bit. It was this intense bond, younger boy, idolizing the older, smarter one. It seemed like a really positive force in Ilyusha's difficult life.
Yeah. Then comes the breaking point. And this is where Zuzka, the dog, comes back into the story in a terrible way.
This is the pivotal dark turn. The sources link it directly back to Kolya's daredevil nature, or at least his recklessness.
He proposed a stunt?
Yeah. He suggested Ilyusha feed Zuzka his own dog bread with a large iron pin hidden inside.
That's horrifying. How did he frame it?
As something exciting, a shared secret, a thrill. The sources quote him saying something like, "It'll be a stunt, we'll see, it'll be fun." Not presenting it as cruel, but as daring.
And Ilyusha, trusting his mentor, looking up to him.
He went along with it. Fed the pin-laced bread to his own dog.
The outcome must have been immediate as awful.
Devastating. Zuzka ate it. The pin got stuck in his throat. The sources describe him crying out in pain, blood coming from his throat.
Oh, terrible.
And then he just ran off. Vanished. They searched everywhere, the sources emphasized, but the dog was gone.
How did Ilyusha handle that? The realization of what he'd done.
The sources say the initial act was misplaced trust, but the guilt hit him hard afterwards. He understood he had not done the right thing. He felt awful about hurting his dear dog, this loyal pet. He was incredibly sad.
Which led him to confront Kolya.
Understandably. He started arguing, expressing his distress, pointing out Kolya's role. This wasn't right. This shouldn't have happened. Blaming Kolya.
And Kolya, the proud genius. How did he take the criticism?
Badly. The sources indicate his pride, his ego was really wounded. He felt unappreciated, maybe, thinking, how dare Ilyusha speak to me like this after everything he'd done?
He didn't see the severity of the dog incident.
Apparently not. He seemed to dismiss it, like, what's the big deal? He'll be fine. This perceived ingratitude, the challenge to his judgment, it led him to just cut Ilyusha off completely.
He stopped talking to him. Ended the friendship.
Entirely. The sources say their communication just ceased. One reckless act, born from Kolya's complex personality, shattered the friendship and left Ilyusha vulnerable again.
And the consequences were immediate for Ilyusha, weren't they? Without Kolya's protection.
Swift and severe. The bullying started right back up.
Relentless beatings and harassment again.
Yes. And the sources add this incredibly painful detail. During one beating, Ilyusha saw Kolya standing nearby, hoped he'd step in.
But Kolya didn't maintain that distance.
He didn't intervene, just watched. This perceived abandonment, this refusal to help when Ilyusha desperately needed him, it just crushed Ilyusha emotionally.
Which led to Ilyusha having an outburst at Kolya. Something about hurting other dogs.
Right. After that beating, he confronted Kolya, full of hurt and anger, and yelled something like, "Now you'll see, I'll feed needle bread to all the dogs I find."
But the sources are clear, he didn't actually do it. It was just words.
Exactly. Just the cry of a hurt, powerless child lashing out, a desperate threat born of pain.
And Kolya's reaction to this?
This is key. Indifference. Total, cold indifference. The sources stress that Kolya did not react. Ilyusha poured out his anger, his pain, and got nothing back.
And that indifference was worse than anger would have been.
That's the point the sources make. Indifference is maybe the cruelest response. Love or hate their reactions. But being met with nothing, it's tormenting. It makes you feel invisible. Ilyusha was deeply affected, burned up by Kolya's coldness.
And then comes the heartbreaking connection the sources draw. It was right after this period, the renewed bullying, the guilt, Kolya's indifference, that Ilyusha's health failed.
The link is explicit. From here you will see his health started deteriorating. His physical decline began right after this intense emotional trauma.
Which brings us back to where we started this deep dive. Ilyusha on his deathbed, about a month after getting sick. Everyone knows he's dying.
And his focus, the symbol of all that unresolved pain and guilt, is still Zuzka.
His father even tried bringing in another puppy.
Yeah, a desperate attempt to soothe him, but Ilyusha rejected it. Only Zuzka would do. The dog he hurt, prompted by the friend who then abandoned him. That's the core of his suffering as he fades.
It's such a tragic state. But then the story offers this unexpected twist, a moment of hope.
Yes. After a month of silence, news finally reaches Kolya that Ilyusha is critically ill, dying.
And Kolya decides to act.
The sources say he realized he should go now, that he had to put his ego aside. The seriousness of the situation overrides his pride. Poor guy, he's dying, he thinks. I have to go. So he goes to visit Ilyusha at their humble home, described as almost a hut.
And he doesn't arrive empty-handed.
No. This is the incredible moment. Kolya arrives, and he has a dog with him.
It's Zuzka, the dog Ilyusha has been crying out for.
Exactly. Ilyusha recognizes him immediately. The sources describe his joy as immense.
Oh, it's the same dog! It's Zuzka. He brought Zuzka. He's very happy.
And Kolya explains what happened.
Yes. Turns out Zuzka hadn't died from the pin. Kolya found him. There was some bleeding, but he recovered.
And Kolya had been looking after him all this time.
For the whole month or 6 weeks since the incident. Took great care of him, Kolya explains. And more than that,
He trained him.
extensively. Kolya demonstrates it right there. Zuzka now obeys commands, plays dead, jumps for food. He's a highly trained dog. Kolya clearly invested a lot of time and effort into the dog during their separation.
He even renamed him Paris Vaughan.
Right. A bit of Kolya's flair, perhaps. But the effect on Ilyusha is profound.
It must have been overwhelming relief.
Huge. Seeing Zuzka alive lifts that terrible burden of guilt over the pin. The dog survived, and just as importantly, his friendship with Kolya is restored. They're reconciled.
Kolya even tries to encourage him, saying he'll get better.
Yeah, don't worry, Ilyusha, you'll be fine. Trying to offer hope. But the sources give us a glimpse beneath Kolya's words.
They do. They note he's secretly sad, tears in his eyes. He's putting on a brave face for Ilyusha, saying, "Be strong, my brother," but he's deeply affected. It's that performance of strength again, but this time out of love, not ego.
And the scene isn't just Kolya and Ilyusha. The sources mention others are there too.
Yes, it's described as a house full of reconciliation. Even some of the other schoolboys who used to bully Ilyusha are present.
They've made peace too.
Yes, knowing he's dying, they've apologized, they're treating him kindly, and Alexei Karamazov is there as well.
Alexei, who connects back to the earlier help from Katerina.
Exactly. The sources remind us Alexei facilitated Katerina's financial aid for Ilyusha's treatment. Katerina feeling responsible because of Dmitri's actions.
And Captain Snegiryov, who initially refused the money out of pride.
Had eventually accepted it. His desperation to save his son overrode his ego. He needed the funds. Alexei's presence links all these threads, past actions, reconciliation, the wider community impact.
So we have this incredibly emotional, hopeful moment. Reconciliation, the dog returned, friendship restored, but then the doctor arrives.
Yes, a senior doctor sent by Katerina. Reputable, apparently.
His assessment is quick and grim.
He sees immediately that Ilyusha can't be saved. There's no hope.
And his way of delivering this news outside to Captain Snegiryov is, well, blunt.
That's putting it mildly. The sources describe him as a bit blunt, a bit rude. He explains recovery would require sending Ilyusha far away, somewhere impossibly expensive like Sicily, and he suggests the wife and other sick kids be sent away too.
Which is completely impossible for Snegiryov.
He pleads with the doctor, points to their poverty, the hut they live in. I have no money. Where could I send them?
And the doctor's response, pure cold logic.
Exactly. Dismisses the plea entirely. Science says what it says. I can't help it if you're poor. A very rude remark, as the sources call it. No compassion, just detached clinical finality.
Kolya overhears this exchange outside with Alexei,
Yeah.
and he reacts strongly.
He's deeply hurt by the doctor's insensitivity. Kolya might be intellectual, but injustice, cruelty they get to him, he reacts.
And his reaction is defiant. Rude, even.
Oh, yeah. He addresses the doctor dismissively as Doc, a clear lack of respect. Basically says, we'll handle it, rejecting the doctor's cold advice.
The doctor's annoyed by this boy's insolence.
Asks who he is. Alexei tries to smooth it over. He's just a child, sometimes speaks rudely.
But the doctor isn't having it.
No, he snaps back that Kolya needs a good beating. Yeah. Needs a proper thrashing.
And Kolya's response here is fascinating. It brings together so many threads.
It really does. He looks at his dog, Paris Fawn, who's right there. He makes a gesture, implying the dog might attack.
And says something challenging.
Doctor, this Paris Fawn he attacks. It makes the doctor nervous. The sources mention the tense gazes between them before the doctor leaves quickly.
It's amazing. The same dog involved in the act that broke the friendship is now used by Kolya, subtly, defiantly, to protect the dignity of his friend's grieving father.
It shows his core traits, boldness, reacting against injustice, loyalty are still there, but maybe maturing. Still sharp-edged, but channeled differently. It underscores his complexity.
So after that tense scene, Kolya, Alexei, and Captain Snegiryov go back inside.
And the adults, they try to offer comfort, hope against hope, telling Ilyusha, you'll be fine, the doctor said so. A gentle lie.
But Ilyusha knows. He sees through it.
Heartbreakingly clear, he asks them not to deceive him. I know I won't get better. I know I'm going to die, so don't try to soothe me. Just accepts it.
And then comes this incredibly moving moment of embrace.
Ilyusha reaches out. Kolya stands on one side, his father on the other. They embrace him. A powerful connection in the face of death.
And the grief just pours out.
The whole room dissolves into tears. These three embraced and cried profusely, the sources say. Alexei, the mother, the sisters, Snegiryov, Ilyusha himself, everyone is weeping.
Except, initially, Kolya.
Right. The sources note that while he's holding Ilyusha, Kolya isn't crying at first. He's still trying to be strong for Ilyusha, whispering, be strong, you'll be fine. That performance of resilience again.
But it doesn't last. He leaves suddenly.
Right after saying that, he says, I must go now, and bolts out of the house.
Alexei follows him.
Yes, and witnesses the breakdown. The Kolya, who is so strong inside, completely falls apart outside, crying intensely.
Finally letting the reality hit.
Acknowledging the inevitable, because he knows Ilyusha is going to die, and he's crying, the sources say. He voices it out loud. We can't save him. We cannot save him. All the suppressed grief and affection pouring out.
And Captain Snegiryov comes out too.
And just breaks down completely, collapses on a bench, sobbing loudly, intensely.
Fueled by a specific painful memory the sources mention.
Ilyusha's innocent, devastating words. Papa, when I die, get another boy just like me and name him Ilyusha too. The sheer agony of that thought for the father. What kind of things is my boy saying? It's unbearable.
It's just this scene of overwhelming, raw grief outside. Kolya weeping, the father sobbing, Alexei watching, tearful himself.
A very emotional scene, as the sources put it. The culmination of all the suffering, the guilt, the loss, expressed in this shared breakdown.
And from that intense emotional peak, the narrative, according to the sources, jumps forward.
Yes, about 2 months pass after these events around Ilyusha's death.
And we learn Dmitry Karamazov is still in jail.
His situation hasn't changed. He's still imprisoned while life and tragedy have moved on outside.
But the sources use this time skip to highlight a contrast regarding Dmitri's visitors.
Right. Katerina, his betrothed, the one who helped Ilyusha's family financially, she hasn't visited Dmitri in jail even once.
Not once, but Grushenka.
Grushenka, the other woman in his life, has been visiting him constantly, regularly. The sources really emphasize this. She goes constantly.
A significant shift in focus for her, and the sources suggest this period has changed Grushenka herself.
They do. They mention she seems different, that she's undergone a kind of spiritual transformation. Her heart has changed, undergoing a spiritual change, perhaps driven by Dmitri's situation, her constant visits. She's not the same person she was.
And the source material indicates that this is where the story picks up next, focusing on Grushenka's visits to Dmitri in jail.
Yeah, it leaves us seeing how these personal tragedies like Ilyusha's death and Kolya's journey have these ripples that affect everyone, even changing the inner lives of characters like Grushenka. It's all interconnected.
Wow, that was quite a journey through that section. Incredibly deep, incredibly moving. We've really seen the layers of tragedy around Ilyusha, haven't we?
Absolutely. And the complexity of Kolya, the daredevil, the genius, the loyal friend, the carelessly cruel instigator, the defiant protector, and ultimately the grieving boy. It's all in there.
And Captain Snegiryov's raw pain is just palpable, plus those unexpected shifts, like with Grushenka.
It really hits home how actions, even things that seem small or reckless at the time, like Kolya's dare with the pin, they can just cascade outwards with devastating effects.
Yeah, and we see guilt, regret, human connection playing out so intensely against the backdrop of death.
And the different ways people cope, or try to cope. Kolya's attempt to maintain that strong facade is fascinating. Maybe it's the persona he relies on, but the real emotion, the grief, it just bursts through eventually.
It feels so universal, even though it's from this classic novel. These dynamics of friendship, especially intense adolescent friendships, the weight of guilt, the pain of loss, trying to understand people who are, well, as complicated as Kolya clearly is.
Exactly. These aren't just characters on a page. They reflect struggles we all recognize.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Consider Kolya's journey just in this slice of the story. Showing off bravery, then carelessness leading to harm, then suppressing his own pain to seem strong for Ilyusha, only to break down alone. What does that tell us about the burden of trying to appear strong, especially for someone you love? How heavy is that mask?
That's a powerful thought to leave with. A lot to mull over there about vulnerability and performance.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the sources.
We hope it sparked your curiosity to keep exploring these kinds of complex stories and the fascinating, often contradictory people within them.